Putin thinks that he can outweight Ukraine and outweigh Ukraine's supporters. The message coming out of Capri is he can't. Every G7 member is making extraordinary contributions to Ukraine's defense. And as I've said before, this is the best burden sharing that I've ever seen across the Atlantic in more than 30 years of being engaged in these issues, with Europe as well as Asian partners picking up more than their share of the load. I want to particularly recognize Prime Minister Meloni for her leadership, her decisive leadership. We can see two things right now. Together, we are helping to put Ukraine on a long-term path where it will stand strongly on its own 2 feet, militarily, economically, democratically. More than now 30 countries are engaged in negotiating, and some have concluded negotiations with Ukraine on security pacts. And together with what I'm convinced will emerge from the NATO summit, you can see Ukraine effectively building a force for the future, one that can deter aggression and defeat it as necessary. We're working to drive private sector investment into Ukraine and also help it develop its own defense industrial base in ways that will provide for a strong, enduring economy. And of course, now that the accession path to the EU is open, that will help Ukraine deep-root its democracy. But even as we're doing all of that, we heard clearly from Foreign Minister Kuleba that it's imperative that in this moment, Ukraine get more resources that it needs to deal with the ongoing Russian aggression. It needs more air defenses. It needs more munitions. It needs more artillery. Allies and partners, including the G7 countries, are committed to delivering on that. We discussed steps to provide more assistance more immediately to Ukraine. We also discussed ways to protect and help restore its energy grid, which Russia has sought to decimate. And here again, I think we can see important steps that were already taken, but more to come in making sure that Ukraine has sustainable energy for its people. We're also working to strengthen efforts to disrupt the transfer of weapons and also inputs for Russia's defense industrial base. When it comes to weapons, what we've seen, of course, is North Korea and Iran primarily providing things to Russia. But when it comes to Russia's defense industrial base, the primary contributor in this moment to that is China. We see China sharing machine tools, semiconductors, other dual-use items that have helped Russia rebuild the defense industrial base that sanctions and export controls had done so much to degrade. Now, if China purports, on the one hand, to want good relations with Europe and other countries, it can't, on the other hand, be fueling what is the biggest threat to European security since the end of the Cold War. And you don't have to just take that from me. This is what I heard around the table at the G7.